Hello and welcome to I Create My Games. I'm Jens and this is Parallax Part 8, version 2.0 and source files. Now since the last time I uploaded a Parallax video, it's been like 3 months and I heard the question of the source files over and over again. So people just want these files and up until now I decided, well, if you want to learn it, you should just write it because then the comprehension level is way higher. And I still think this is an important step that you actually try to work with the code to comprehend what's happening so you can apply to a similar scenario with ease. But sometimes you just want these controllers to work, so I decided to upload these to Git. And I will of course link the repository in the description. And here we have basically two things. First of all, the Parallax controller version 1, which is the one created during the YouTube tutorial, and a newer and improved version, which we are going to talk about in this video. Now, if you just want the files from the video, you can just download this one and you're good to go. You can just compare it maybe with a tool to watch them side by side or whatever. Now, if you want the newer ones, we can just go ahead and go with download zip. And then here we have the Parallax controller folder. I'll just copy it outside and then drag it inside my project. Now, previously we only had two files inside this, the controller and the image, and we still have these two files. They work a little bit different, but we'll get to that in a minute. We do now have an editor folder as well, which is, well, a way for Unity to extend the functionality of the Unity editor without, without using them in the actual build. So Unity is smart enough to say whenever we have this editor folder somewhere in our assets, we just don't use it in the build. And here I implemented a few small setup helpers to, well, help us set up the Parallax controller with a little bit more ease. So the general idea still applies. I have a game camera and a parallax camera. And the game camera has the clear flag set to don't clear and also a depth which has to be higher than the other camera. So I want this to always be in front of the parallax camera. So the parallax camera is at -1, and of course this has a clear flag, but I don't need it since I'm never going out of the bounds. Now for the controller, which is basically directly under it, we can just drag it inside, and we're talking about everything in a minute. But let's first apply the image as well. Now, first of all, we still need to realize that we are using a sprite renderer, and a sprite renderer has a specific sorting layer and an ordering layer. Now, with a lot of things, we can simply use bulk actions, so we can simply, well, mark every one of the images and set a different sorting layer, but with the ordering layer, this just doesn't work. So let's imagine they're all set to 0. This might look a little bit weird. And since I'm a very, well, lazy person, I created a possibility for us to set this up a bit faster. So I want this one to be at order and layer maybe 1, the next one and 2, 3, and so on. So the editor scripts hold functionality to extend the controller. And as you can see here, there's a section for the setup. And this section has something for the sprite renderer. So in my case, I want the ordering layer to be applied to every child which is currently active. In my case, it wouldn't matter because I have only active childs, but sometimes you do have some which are inactive. So only active game objects inside my image, Parallax controller, I mean. And then the start sorting layer is 1, and I increase it by 1 as well. So if I now hit set sprite layer by child index, I simply set them to 1, 2, 3, and so on. So that's the sprite renderer setup, and we're done with that. Now for the actual Parallax image, we still can use bulk actions for most things. So again, if I want to do have them instances or change the reposition buffer and everything, we can just do it. But for the speed an X and Y, it just doesn't work that way. So if I, for example, want all of these to have a different speed, which is necessary for a parallax effect, I need them to be increased in a specific way. And I created a few buttons to shorthand this. And let's say, for example, I want to increase it by 20% for every layer. So I start with 1, increase it by 20%, and then I have the speed X at 1, 1.2, 1.44, and so on. I can also use fixed values, like I think 0.5 is the thing I used in the videos. So again, I start with 1, did I? I think. Let's just do it. And by 0.5, so the first one is of course at 1, 0.5, and so on. And I can do the same thing for the Y, which is just in the description here. So if it's false, I will change speed.y. And again, I start at 1, but this time I want to decrease it. Actually, I don't know why I want that. I just want to decrease it. So decrease it by 0.2, and I have the effect I talked about in the video, where I have one layer which is at 0. Then, of course, this will increase in that direction, and this will decrease in the other direction. So this is negative 0.2, negative 0.4. And with this, I have an effect which I actually like very much. Now, for the other setup, we still need to decide what we want to do with the actual parallax effect. So right now, horizontal movement and vertical movement are set to fixed, so they won't change at all. And they both have an over time or a follow transform feature. Of course, for the follow transform, we need to apply a transform. So let's say I want to follow a transform. I will change this. This will be positive, and the transform I want to follow, I just simply have the player, just like in the tutorials. Now let's also randomize the start and give it maybe slightly lower. And for the vertical movement, again, I follow a transform. This is negative. And again, the player is applied. And I think 0.4 is okay. So if I now start, I have the parallax image set up, so I can hit play. And well, the basic parallax logic still applies, and everything works just as preferred. And if I jump up, we can see that these images are moving up and down. Now keep in mind, it still doesn't have a border or anything, so I can, in theory, move out of the picture and create some unwanted behavior. And I even fell through the floor, but well, it's not part of the parallax controller, so I'm good with it. Now, I could also change the general logic in how this behaves by changing it, of course, to overtime. Now, you might ask what exactly is overtime on the vertical movement, which we didn't have in the parallax controller tutorials. Only the horizontal was possible overtime. Now, for the vertical, overtime is a sine curve. I don't know if I say it correctly, but it's just moving up and down over a curve the whole time. So I can go with overtime, and I think I need this positive, and you can just play around with these value a little bit. So I hit play again, and we're moving overtime to the side, and you can see it a little bit. I just increase it. You can see it moving up and down a little bit over time. So it's like breathing in, breathing out. And I also have the option to reinitialize the controller, which previously was set to the return button. I just now have a button for it. So that's that. And we're basically done. Now, as you might remember, we still have the option to not work with seamless, but with instances. And we didn't use these specific images because these are just designed to be seamless. We used others. So let's just disable this real quick and start again. So the controller is applied, and the images need, of course, the image as well. Same thing. And I already previously went ahead and set the Sprite Renderer, so we don't need to do it right now, but for your case, of course, you do need it. And here we can now decide how we want to work with it. Again, the general idea is pretty much the same. So I want a specific speed in the x direction, and the specific speed in the x direction, let's go again with by dot 5. And for the y direction, I will use something similar. But oh no, let's make it fixed. Oh, it's already fixed. So I don't need to change it. I can just do this and positive. And the player is applied, a bit randomized, and we're basically good to go. Now, as you remember, we have now the speed set to x and y, and we don't move in y, but we still didn't change the image type. So we had these 3 little images, which are well, set to instances, so we can work with it a little bit different. So instances can be changed by changing the size and repositioned in a different way, so they don't appear right next to each other, but maybe with a little bit more distance. So we can put these 2 instances. The reposition buffer will be set to 20, so they are repositioned outside of the image and not inside the image, which would be for this one a bit too fast. And inside the instance modifier, we have a few things. So the spawn buffer, let's give it a 20 as well and make it a little bit more randomized. Give it like, I don't know, it goes up to 5. We also scale it a little bit random and freeze the Y position and go with 1.5. So if we now hit play, the general idea is still the same, but we have these instances. So if I hit play and pause, we can see that these instances are spawned in a specific, more randomized way. So these are actually different sizes and different positions, so it doesn't appear to be that close together. But we had this logic previously, so the idea is still the same, but it's just a little bit more organized inside the well, Parallax image component. So we can we know it's only for instances. So if I check it, the scale is 1 for the first one, and if I go to tree rocks again, where is it? Here we can see it's a bit more randomized. And with that, we can use the Parallax Image Controller version 2 without any problems. And that's it for this video. If you still got any questions left or are interested in how I created those editor scripts, feel free to ask me down in the comments. I'll do my best to answer as fast as possible. If you haven't subscribed yet, now would be a great time to do so. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.